Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
We made it. At least some of us made it. Still some more coming, right? Nandagopal, still more coming? As Nandagopal said yesterday evening, this has been a several-year meditation, and now it's happening. Because logistically, it's so much easier to visit the Holy Dham when you're in Mayapur, because there's everything right in one place, and Dham is a little more difficult, but also okay. So logistically, it's a transcendental place. Puri is fine. This is very challenging for our organizers. So I was thinking, no, it's too difficult. And everyone was saying, yes, let's go. So here we are. The morning discussion will be setting the mood for this South Indian pilgrimage, and in general for pilgrimage. In America there were pilgrims. That's what they called them anyways. Europeans that came to America to settle were called pilgrims. And we're coming from many different places. I'm surprised to see some of the people who are here from many different places. Some places here in India and some places far away. So whether you're here from India or from far away, pilgrimage, the implication of the term itself is you leave something behind to enter into something new. The leave something behind has to do with, we're going to places where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, upon leaving Jagannath Puri and made his South India tour, we're going to go to those very places that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to. We're going to be out of sequence for the first place only, for logistical reasons. Kumarahata was the first place that Lord Chaitanya recorded in Chaitanya Charitamrita went to, and we're going there tomorrow. And then he came to Simhachalam next, as far as what's recorded. Undoubtedly there were other places that he visited, but these were principal places that he visited. So just by hearing about Lord Chaitanya's transcendental activities, his teachings, his exchanges with the devotees in these places, there's immense spiritual potency. Just to hear, what to speak of here in the places where those pastimes actually took place, it amplifies or magnifies the cleansing effect of those things that we'd like to leave behind, like in the material world, as we make our way towards the spiritual world. So similarly, hearing the potencies have both capacity, cleansing and awakening of our attraction for Krishna and our love for Krishna and our desire to unconditionally serve Krishna, just by the very activities that we're going to be doing in the course of the pilgrimage. Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam. The teaching of the process of surrender is let go of those things that are not favorable to bhakti, and accept those things that are favorable to bhakti. So this is another part of visiting these places and hearing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. There are many very wonderful instructions of how to. Devotees like to ask how-to questions. How to carry out your devotional service more effectively. So if you listen carefully, you'll hear nice instructions how to render your devotional service in an improved or an enhanced fashion. Part of that enhancement is he's moving the speaker. Part of the enhancement is what, and another is the mood. I'll give one example without naming some name. When we were in Jagannath Puri, one devotee took note of the fact that the prostitute that was sent by Ramchandra Khan to get Haridas Thakur to fall down, it doesn't describe that she chanted for those 3 days. She just heard Haridas Thakur chanting for 3 days and nights. From hearing Haridas Thakur chanting, she became completely purified. So, practical application point, one devotee said, was, I'd like to, every day when I'm chanting my rounds, hear for some portion Srila Prabhupada chanting his japa, and hear my Guru Maharaj's chanting for some portion of my chanting, or just hear and not chant, just applying something that will enhance your devotional life. Another devotee was sharing that they were appreciating some of the devotees, and we're going to hear further about other devotees who were very much inspired to write. They like to write, express in poetic fashion or some literary fashion their feelings. So to cultivate that quality, because they're described, they're devotees that have that capacity, and they advanced in Krishna consciousness by applying that capacity in their spiritual life. So their plan was, in the course of hearing different prayers to the holy name or glorifications of chanting the holy name, something in that line, take note of them, memorize them, and in the course of each morning's japa, take intervals of time between rounds or something, and absorb themselves in the thought of those glorifications of the holy name. And then over a period of time, perhaps something will inspire them and they'll write something that they'll write. If you're listening carefully, then you'll find there's instructions in Lord Chaitanya's life, by his example, or by the devotee's example, or by his words, both his life and his precepts. There's wonderful instructions how to enhance and improve your devotional service. Overall, to gain affinity for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, increase our faith and our love and our desire to serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, visiting these places that he went to and hearing his nice instructions. That's a desired outcome. Like, for example, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu desired to travel to Vrindavan, with many tricks the devotees were delaying and delaying and delaying, and finally he began his journey to Vrindavan. King Prataparudra accompanied him with his royal entourage and wealth and boats, and they made commemoration places where Lord Chaitanya crossed this river or entered into this town. We have that in the West, George Washington slept here, and he crossed the Potomac at this place, and things like that. You probably have similar things here in India. But absorption in the activities of Lord Chaitanya. Bhaktisiddhanta, in reverse, did the same thing. He made a pilgrimage, as we're doing, the places in the 1930s, the places where Lord Chaitanya visited. And he established padapitas. He'd established little shrines with the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya. We'll see those places, many of them. In honor of. So, taking part in pilgrimage it increases our faith and our love and our desire to serve Lord Chaitanya and his mission and his devotees. Each of the places that we're going to visit have that distinction. They're places that Lord Chaitanya went, but they are also, or were also at the time he went there, holy places. That's the narration found in Chaitanya Charitamrita, because Lord Chaitanya went on pilgrimage to the holy places. The external purpose was he was looking for Vishwarup. But Kaviraj Goswami says he's omniscient. He knew that his brother Vishwarup was already gone from this world. So that wasn't his real reason. The real reason was purifying those places of pilgrimage, increasing his ecstasy and love of God through visiting those places and delivering people. And we'll find wonderful descriptions of Lord Chaitanya's delivering so many personalities throughout the whole of his 2-year tour of South India. So these are already places of pilgrimage, so we're like double, triple purification. That's the leave things behind and receive those things that are going to further our Krishna consciousness. And wherever we'll be, each of the places that we go, we'll be performing kirtan. It was very, very nice Yatra in Puri, having like really enthusiastic youth that are really absorbed in a quality way in the chanting of the holy name. So we have Govinda Prabhu with us also from Vrindavan. He managed to take a break from Vrindavan and come and join us, so we'll have very nice kirtan. So, anticipate purification. And that part of the purification will be joyful. There's going to be another part of purification, the austerities and the mosquitoes and the taking your luggage and putting it on the bus, taking your luggage and taking it off the bus, getting your hotel room, and things aren't, the way that they should be because it's just the material world and somebody was supposed to be someplace but they weren't there. There'll be inconveniences. That's another purification. And when one's on pilgrimage, one takes those inconveniences in stride, in fact takes them joyfully, because there's always some opportunity to please Krishna or satisfy Krishna in any circumstance. And if you're looking, you'll find that opportunity. The Sangha of Vaishnavas, when it's japa time in the morning, as far as your duties and so forth permit, chant together, and we do that over the period of time that we're together, you'll find that your chanting quality will increase. It'll be a very nice experience, and your chanting will improve just from that part alone. And there will be so many opportunities by design and by circumstance that will give you an opportunity to serve the devotees. And that's very nice. You'll hear probably a couple hundred times in the course of this pilgrimage in South India the significance, the importance, the emphasis of serving the Vaishnavas. Because we're entering an area where the teachings of Ramanujacharya and the presence of Ramanujacharya were very, very prominent. And this was a cornerstone of his teaching, as it is in our Gaudiya Vaishnava teaching. So you'll hear it again and again, and you'll be given opportunities. So a pilgrimage like this is an opportunity. Persons who you don't even know, they're Vaishnavas, but you don't necessarily know them. By the time we're done, it'll be like a happy family. We'll start to know so many people we never knew before, and it'll be very nice. But the medium is service. It's just part of what the pilgrimage is. There are children, there's older people, there's somebody will get sick, something will happen, somebody will forget something. So many opportunities for service. One other item I wanted to mention is developing Vaishnava qualities. Besides teachings and general purification, there's by hearing about and meditating upon and glorifying exalted Vaishnavas, the qualities of those Vaishnavas become our qualities. This is a very specific teaching of Ramanujacharya. In one of his most prominent writings, he describes the answer to the question, how to develop Vaishnava qualities. Pilgrimage is an opportunity for doing that. In the Bhagavad Gita, well, in Bhagavad Gita and Nectar Devotion and in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we have teachings about there's qualities of a devotee. And amongst all those qualities of devotee, Nectar Devotion lists 26. One of them is foremost, Svarup Lakshana. And the others are Tatastha Lakshana, or marginal. Behind the one, the other 25 follow. You develop one very nicely, and by Krishna's mercy, the others will follow. And the one that's principal or foremost, essential, is exclusive attachment to Krishna. Krishna Eka Sharana. Complete Krishna Eka Sharana. Completely attached to Krishna, fully surrendered to Krishna. Of course, that doesn't happen without the mercy of a devotee of Krishna. But by the mercy of the devotees of Krishna, complete shelter in Krishna. And then the other qualities come. But drill down a little bit, and how do those other qualities come? Do they just fall out of the sky like rain, and all of a sudden you're wet? You have nice qualities. There's a to a degree, it's simply an act of mercy. Krishna decorates his devotees with qualities. But there's something for the devotee side also. And that specifically is what we'll be doing during this pilgrimage. Hearing, remembering, glorifying, speaking about, meditating upon. During the course of our visit to this South Indian Yatra, you will hear descriptions of many devotees who are, as they say in the West, awesome. So, listen carefully, and I'll even make a specific recommendation. As you're taking your notes or recalling, or something that you can take home with you, is see if there's one particular, even find one particular personality whose qualities inspire you very much. And follow this process that Ramanujacharya recommended. Continue beyond this yatra of hearing about that person, reading about that person, speaking about the person, remembering the person, reciting things that they wrote or spoke, assimilating that person's quality that inspires you so much, and that will become your quality. It's a spiritual reality, how it works. That's how Krishna decorates his devotee with nice qualities, because Krishna has already decorated some other devotee with that nice qualities, and you're at the feet of that devotee, saying, my dear, wonderful devotee, your qualities inspire me very much, and that quality will become your quality. Consider in the course of this pilgrimage. It can even be some particular way that Lord Chaitanya dealt with a circumstance, whatever it is that inspires you. Let that go more deeply and transform your heart. That's pilgrimage. When you go away from the pilgrimage, it's not just a memory, it's a changed condition of heart. A good principle to observe during yatras is the worldly katha. When you go back, you can do that if you need to, but while here, speak about the subject matters that you're hearing. Speak about Krishna. I mean, practical arrangements like, where do we put our shoes, and where do we wash our hands, and practical things. But as far as possible, enter into a mood of just speak Krishna Katha. When we were waiting for the train from Balasore to come to Vishakhapatnam, there was, the train was delayed. Surprise, the train was delayed. So there was a group of men, they were taking advantage of that. They sat down and were playing cards right on the platform. And I was thinking of Kalidas. His activity was, he was always chanting Krishna's name as he was engaging in his daily activity, just always in between sentences chanting Krishna's name. And sometimes playfully, jokingly, he'd take dice and roll the dice and go, Krishna, 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 Krishna. So that's not what these men were doing. I didn't see any money being exchanged, but that's part of the program, is they play cards, and it's amusement. It's just like making the brain dull while passing the time as life, valuable human life, is passing. but no thought of Krishna. So even when doing your everyday things, increase chanting, like the devotees in cleansing the Gundicha temple, as they made the human chain to get water from the Indra Dumna Sarovar, and the clay pots were being passed to get the water and bring the water back. All that was heard was Krishna, 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 Krishna. So that's if you become like really ecstatic, you can do like that. But in between, just the idea is leave mundane talk behind. Leave your cares and worries behind. Enter into the mood of Lord Chaitanya's wonderful pastimes. When going to the places that we'll visit, particularly, in general, but also particularly when at these places, offer prayers to the deities or the great devotees or Lord Chaitanya in exhibiting the pastimes that he was teaching to instruct us, to free us from our material condition, to show us the way of how we can be Krishna conscious and practice Krishna consciousness. Offer prayers that those things may enter within your heart, that the mercy of the deity or the devotee in this particular way. Prayerful mood is always good, and particularly doing what we're doing, taking this yatra. Be eager to receive mercy and be eager to render service. Many things may happen, like the Houston devotees were sharing at the end of our Puri Yatra. They had one challenge after the next challenge after the next challenge, and some very scary things happen. Some persons hospitalized, sometimes locked inside their rooms in an unsafe place, but each circumstance had an amazingly satisfying ending, and there was mercy involved. So each circumstance that we find ourselves, take it as, at least be eager to receive mercy. We've already had, I don't know if you mentioned this yesterday, we've already had some experience already. Some personal belongings were stolen yesterday right here from this room. So, well, I only see devotees, but somebody else had some other idea in mind. Our Radha Krishna was sharing that he attended the Jagannath Puri Rath Yatra one year. And the next day after Rath Yatra, normally you see like shops lining both sides and garbage lining both sides. He saw hundreds and hundreds and thousands of wallets, empty wallets, all over the place, strewn all over the place. So when we're going on pilgrimage, keep your doors locked and keep your valuables safe, because it'd be nice to be able to take them home with you. Your passport. It's nice to have a passport if you want to get on a plane. We're going to be going to places that are not ISKCON centers. So we want to be respectful of other traditions and other places, others' ways of worship, and so on. At the same time, it's a great opportunity in this format of a pilgrimage of showing by example what the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stand for, by our behavior primarily, how we interact with one another. People see that, and our attraction for the holy name. People see that. they don't accept Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the way that we accept Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That question was asked by King Prataparudra to Gopinath Acharya in Chaitanya Charitamrita. This exit, he was seeing the wonderful Sankirtan and hearing from Gopinath Acharya the amazing qualities of Lord Chaitanya's devotees. And then he asked this question, why is it that great scholars and other spiritually elevated personalities, they don't accept Lord Chaitanya as the Supreme Personality of Godhead? And the reply Gopinath Acharya gave was, it's only possible to understand him when one has received Lord Chaitanya's mercy, which means the mercy of a devotee of Lord Chaitanya. Just like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, the brother-in-law of Gopinath Acharya, received the mercy of Lord Chaitanya because he received the mercy of his brother-in-law, who was a devotee. And how did he become a devotee? He received the mercy of a devotee. And so we're going to be going to a lot of places where people don't know about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But if we can demonstrate by example nice qualities and enthusiasm, especially enthusiasm for kirtan, very powerful. The devotee that was guiding us in Puri reported he went back after we had left Gambhira. He went back the next day just to check with them and see how everything went, because he noticed that normally they have kirtan when it's arti time. We were there when it was Rajbhog Arti. Oh, the banging of the gongs goes on for a long time, really loud, like, you know, boom, 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 boom. And they just did it very little. It was purposeful. They were respecting our devotees. And at the end, the chief manager, he shared with me, and he shared later with our guide, very moved by the kirtan, and especially this nice Shachi Sutta Astakam composed by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya in honor of Lord Chaitanya. They knew they didn't need a song sheet, they knew the words. It's part of their culture, and that we were singing that which is part of their culture. And Madhavananda was sharing with me that people, whatever they may think about themselves and about others, including ISKCON, universally everyone appreciates the holy name, chanting of the holy name, regardless. Almost. In the Samadhi of Haridas Thakur, I've noticed the 3 times that I've been there, each time when we come, they do their multi-gong program, running around, and so literally what they want to do is have us not chant Hare Krishna, because they chant something else and say you can't chant Hare Krishna in kirtan. But the devotees don't respect that, and so they've taken the counter. They just hit their gong so loud, it's like your eardrums are going to be spoiled, so you leave. But the other place where we went, Madhavananda was sharing this with me, the other place is where they were having that sitting down kirtan. We came in, 3 altars, Radha Kanta altar, the deities of Narottam Das Thakur, those of you that are with us. The devotees have done the opposite when they come into that place, gongs and many drums and Hare Krishna Kirtan, when that's not part of what they do. So we had a prior plan. They were going to chant something else, Govinda Jaya Jaya or Yasomati Nandana or something, so that they wouldn't be bent out of shape. with that exception, everyone loves kirtan. And they not only love kirtan, they love enthusiastic kirtan. And they love enthusiastic kirtan when there's dancing, and that's not something that they're accustomed to. They're accustomed to something far more, especially here in South India, something more sedate and ritualistic and so on. But if we're enthusiastic in kirtan, we'll be happy, and it'll be nice preaching. Their appreciation for the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will be elevated by that. Want to mention one more thing. While we're respecting others' traditions and beliefs and practices and so on, we should be careful not to get confused or doubtful about our own practices and beliefs and teachings. I was thinking about this. While offering respect, it doesn't mean that we abandon our own siddhanta and way of life. One example we're going to hear is when Lord Chaitanya visits Srirangam, and he has his dialogue with Venkatabhatta, the chief priest of Srirangam, while staying at his home for 4 months in the rainy season. And they have this very interesting dialogue about the relationship between Narayana and Krishna. So I won't go into that here, but there's another place that I will go into here where Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, it's very early in Adi Leela, chapter 2, he wants the reader, who may not be so familiar with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to appreciate who is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself. And what's the relationship between Krishna himself and Narayana? So he chooses to enter into that. That's like the background of the discussion. And he goes right away to Krishna's conversation with Lord Brahma in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, after Lord Brahma steals the calves and the cowherd boys. And he writes it as, it's not found in Srimad Bhagavatam like this, but it's Krishnadas Kaviraj taking the opportunity to glorify Krishna, and thereby glorifying Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is non-different than Krishna. Which means, as you hear this description, he's non-different than Lord Narayan, who we're going to hear very much about here in South India, because Ramanuja and his followers accepted Lord Narayan as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, this is from Adi Leela, chapter 2. The texts run from text 28 to 59. Narayana and Sri Krishna are the same personality of Godhead, but although their bodily features are different, although they are identical, their bodily features are different. Krishna holds a flute with 2 hands, and Lord Narayan holds the club, the disk, the conch, and the lotus. And then he quotes 10th canto, chapter 14, text 14. That becomes then, the rest is a commentary on this verse. So listen to this verse carefully. 10:14:14. O Lord of Lords, you are the seer of creation. You are indeed everyone's dearest life. Are you not, therefore, my father Narayana? This is Brahma, the creator of the universe, looking at a 6-year-old boy and saying, "Are you not my father, the Lord of the universe, Narayana?" Narayana refers to one whose abode is in the water born from Nara, or Garbhadakshayi Vishnu, and that Narayana is your plenary portion. All your plenary portions are transcendental. They are absolute and not creations of Maya. So he's speaking of the Paravyom, the spiritual sky. And in that spiritual sky there's expansions. The persons from whom they expand are Krishna, and each of the expansions are also beyond the reach of Maya. They're fully transcendental. Next text. After Brahma had offended Krishna by stealing his playmates and calves, he begged the Lord's pardon for his offensive act and prayed to for the Lord's mercy. "I took birth from the lotus that grew from your navel. Saying that to Krishna, little boy with a peacock feather, stretching his left hand out with a lump of yogurt and fruit. I was born from your navel. Thus you are both my father and my mother, and I am your son. Parents never take seriously the offenses of their children, and therefore I beg your pardon and ask for your benediction." Brahma wants to be excused on the basis that I'm your son. Little children may sometimes do naughty things, but the parents overlook those naughty things and excuse them, so please excuse me. Krishna said, "Oh Brahma, your father is Narayana. I am but a cowherd boy. How can you be my son?" Brahma replied, "Are you not Narayana? You are certainly Narayana. Please listen as I state the proofs." So he's going to make a little argument. You are my father. You are Narayana. I'm going to give you 3 proofs. Go quickly. All living beings within the material and spiritual worlds are ultimately born of you. For you are the super soul of them all. Narayana, you are the shelter of all. They are born from you, for you are the super soul. As the earth is the original cause and shelter of all pots made of earth, so you are the ultimate cause and shelter of all living beings. Where do pots come from? They come from the earth. You don't get pots without earth. Similarly, you don't get living entities without the source of the living entities. So you are the source of all living entities. You are Narayana. The word Nara refers to the aggregate of all living beings, and the word Ayana refers to the refuge of them. You are therefore the original Narayana. That is one argument, one proof. Please listen as I state the second. Brahma is very intelligent. The next one is that the functions of the Purusha avatars are similar functions, but Krishna is the shelter of those Purusha avatars. And therefore, you are Narayana. You are the original Narayana. That's the argument, or proof. The direct lords of the living beings are the Purusha incarnations, but your opulence and power are more exalted than theirs. Therefore, you are the primeval Lord, the original father of everyone. The Purushas are protectors of the universes by your power. Since you protect those who are the shelters of all living beings, you are the original Narayana. That's the second argument. Now please listen as I explain the third. There are countless universes, material, and fathomless transcendental Vaikunthas, spiritual. Both in the material world and in the transcendental world, you see all the deeds of all living beings, past, present, and future. Since you are the witness of all such deeds, you know the essence of everything. All the worlds exist because you oversee them. None can live, move, or have their being without your supervision. You oversee the wanderings of all living entities for this reason. You are the primeval Lord, Narayana. And Prabhupada explains in his purport that as Supersoul, in the material world, Supersoul is Maya Jakshena Prakriti, overseeing everything. And living entities are being moved by the machine of the material energy, which Krishna is overseeing. So their existence, their movements. And similarly, in the spiritual world, there's no Paramatma feature, but the Lord is directly observing and permitting and sanctioning whatever happens in the spiritual world. Mukunda. So there's his three proofs. Now Krishna says, Brahma, I can't understand what you are saying. Lord Narayan is he who sits in the hearts of all living beings and lies down in the waters of the Karana ocean. Brahma replied, what I have said is true. That same Narayan who lives in the waters and in the hearts of living beings is but a plenary portion of you. The Karna Dakshaya Vishnu, Garbha Dakshaya Vishnu, and Shira Dakshaya Vishnu forms of Narayana all create in cooperation with the material energy, which is your energy. In this way, they are attached to Maya. These three Vishnus lying in the water are the supersoul of everything. The supersoul of all the universes is known as the first Purusha. Garbha Dakshaya Vishnu is the supersoul or aggregate of the aggregate living entities, and Shira Dakshaya Vishnu is the supersoul of each individual being. Superficially we see these Purushas have a relationship with Maya, but above them in the fourth dimension is Lord Krishna, who has no contact with the material energy. Although these three features of the Lord directly deal with the material energy, none of them are touched by it. They are beyond illusion. This is the opulence of the Lord. Although situated in the material nature, he is never affected by the modes of nature. Similarly, those who are surrendered unto him and fix their intelligence upon him are not influenced by the modes of nature. You are the ultimate shelter of these three plenary portions. There is not the slightest doubt that you are the primeval Narayana. The source of these three features is the Narayana in the spiritual sky. He is your Vilas expansion. Therefore, you are the ultimate Narayana. So, this is our teaching from Srimad Bhagavatam. So when we're taking darshan of Lord Narayana and associating with the devotees who are worshipping Lord Narayana, we don't have to have like, an arm wrestling match with them about, who's stronger. You're stronger or we're stronger. We don't do that. We're respecting. That's their worship. And there's scriptural authority for their worship. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spent 4 months in the home of Venkatabhatta, and he didn't get into arm wrestling. We're not going to either. But at the same time, we should be very clear about what are our teachings, why we have convictions the way that we have them, why Lord Chaitanya was so dynamically glorifying worship of Krishna, exclusive worship of Krishna. And the followers of Lord Chaitanya similarly. So these are some thoughts on preparing ourselves for the Yatra.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
So this is the first of so many firsts. We've read about it, we've seen pictures of it, we heard about it, and now we're here. Simhachalam. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in his 24th year, just before his 25th year, he accepted the order of sannyas in the month of Magh, January, February. And during his 25th birthday, he was traveling in the month of Phalgun, traveling south, where he entered Jagannath Puri. Also during the month of Phalgun, he observed the Dola Yatra festival. And the following month, the month of Chaitra, was the month when he delivered Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And the following month, the month of Vishakha, is when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made his journey heading in a southerly direction in search of Vishwarup, his elder brother, or to liberate the people of South India by the gift of the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. Tomorrow, when we go to Kurmakshetra, I'll describe in detail the Leela of the Lord's leaving Puri, then coming to Kurmakshetra and his activities there. And next in Chaitanya Charitamrita, immediately after describing his visit to Kurmakshetra, it describes his coming to Simhachalam. There's 6 verses in Chaitanya Charitamrita which I'd like to read, starting with text number 3 of Madhya Leela chapter 8. According to his previous program, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went forward on his tour, and after some days arrived at the place of pilgrimage known as Jiyad Nrisimha. That's the deity that we saw, the main deity in the temple. Purport. The Jiyad Nrisimha temple is situated on the top of a hill about 5 miles from Visakhapatnam. There's a railway station on the South Indian Railway known as Simhachala. The temple is known as Simhachala as the best temple in the vicinity of Visakhapatnam. The temple is very affluent and is a typical example of the architecture of the area. In one stone tablet it is mentioned that formerly a queen covered the deity with gold plate. This is mentioned in the Visakhapatnam Gazetteer, in case you didn't read it. About the temple, there are residential quarters for the priests and devotees. Indeed, at the present moment, there are many residential quarters to accommodate visiting devotees. Not so many. Not enough for our group. The original deity is situated within the depths of the temple, but there is another deity, a duplicate, known as the Vijaya Murti. This smaller deity can be moved from the temple and taken on public processions. Priests who generally belong to the Ramanuja Sampradaya are in charge of the deity worship. Text 4. After seeing the deity, Lord Nrisimha, in the temple, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu offered his respectful obeisances by falling flat. Then, in ecstatic love, he performed various dances, chanted, and offered prayers. All glories to Nrisimhadev. All glories to Nrisimhadev, who is the Lord of Prahlad Maharaj, and like the honeybee, is always engaged in beholding the lotus-like face of the goddess of fortune. Purport. The goddess of fortune is always embraced by Lord Nrisimhadev. This is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam in the 1st and 10th cantos by the great commentator Srila Sridhar Swami. The following verse was composed by Sridhar Swami in his commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam 1087.1. 1087, that's Prayers by the Personified Vedas, in the first verse of the Prayers by Personified Vedas chapter. In the purport, Sridhar Swami is commenting. Vag isha yasya vandane, Lakshmir yasya cha vakshasi, yasyasti hridaye samvit, tam nrisimham aham bhaje. Translation. Lord Nrisimhadev is always assisted by Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and he is always embracing to his chest the goddess of fortune. The Lord is always complete in knowledge within himself. Let us offer obeisances unto Lord Nrisimhadev. Similarly, in his commentary on the 1st canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 111, so the first verse of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, again Sridhar Swami is commenting. Prahlada hridayada ladham bhakta vidya vidharanam sharad indu ruchim vande padindha vaddanam harim. Translation. Let me offer my obeisances unto Lord Nrisimhadev, who is always enlightening Prahlad Maharaj within his heart, and who always kills the nescience that attacks the devotees. His mercy is distributed like moonshine, and his face is like that of a lion. Let me offer my obeisances unto him again and again. Now here's another verse. This one's quoted by Krishnadas Kaviraj, but again composed by Srila Sridhar Swami, Canto 7, Chapter 9, text number 1. First verse of Chapter 9. Prahlad offering prayers to Lord Nrisimhadev, but the purport of that verse reads, Ugropi anugra evayam svabhaktanam nri keshari keshishva swapotanam anyesham ugra vikramaha. Ugra, that's, you know what that is. Ferocious, terrible. Ugra, the mood of Lord Nrisimhadev when he's ripping Hiranyakashipu to little pieces. That's Ugra. Although very ferocious, the lioness is very kind to her cubs. Similarly, although very ferocious to non-devotees like Hiranyakashipu, Lord Nrisimhadev is very, very soft and kind to the devotees like Prahlad Maharaj. In this way, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recited different verses from the Shastra. The priest of Lord Nrisimhadev then brought garlands and remnants of the Lord's food and offered them to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. As usual, a Brahmana offered Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu an invitation. The Lord passed the night in the temple and then commenced his tour again. The next morning, in great ecstasy of love, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started on his tour with no knowledge of the proper direction, and he continued the whole day and night. So that's the description found in Chaitanya Charitamrita given to us by Krishnadas Kaviraj, along with Srila Prabhupada's purports on Lord Chaitanya's visit here to Simhachalam. Very, very beautiful temple. Just moving about the temple, it inspires awe and veneration, which is the intent. Commonly, in our Vaishnava tradition, Lord Nrisimhadev is worshipped for removal of obstacles or the reactions to offenses that we may make in the course of rendering our devotional service. Seva aparad. To remove seva aparad, just like Srila Prabhupada institutionalized after we perform every arti in our temples, then we sing Nrsimha prayers. And let's say Mangal Arti, the deity curtain is then closed, and behind the curtain the brahmanas are bathing the deity and changing the clothing of the deity and placing ornaments and fresh garlands and shringar, worshipping the deity and offering a vogue to the deity, and then again performing arti, and then the Nrsimha prayers. Because inadvertently, even a devotee trying to serve very nicely, inadvertently may make some mistake or some offense. And it's not just like washing our hands of our mistakes. We'll just be clean and don't worry about mistakes. But if there's something unintentional, then that seva aparad causes some anartha in the heart to be manifest. And by worshipping Lord Nrisimhadev, it gives protection or removal of those anarthas. So we commonly we pray to Lord Nrisimhadev when we're seeking his protection and shelter. I remember long ago, a group of us, we were very fearless, maybe foolish, but we would go anywhere and everywhere to distribute Prabhupada's books and have Harinam Sankirtan. And one time there was a big concert in Central Park. The whole group of devotees went to the concert in Central Park. And, you know, the main group entered the park together. There was some straggling Matajis. One of the straggling Matajis encountered a mugger, and the mugger was came from behind a tree and was dragging her into the bushes to molest her, or whatever his plan was. And she just screamed at the top of her lungs, Nrisimhadev, 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 Nrisimhadev. And the person said, if that's the way you're going to be about it, forget it. That's one kind of protection. Protection from physical harm. We often think of protection like, you know, the police or the military or something like that is supposed to offer protection to the law-abiding citizens. Of the 4 animal propensities, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, the strongest one is defending. Prabhupada's evidence is one can be engaged in any one of the other 3 things. As important as they may be, if one's safety is at risk, you drop the other 3 things and you protect and defend. It's the strongest. So that's one sense of seeking protection from Lord Nrisimhadev. But spiritual protection is something far more profound. Spiritual protection means the desires, the impurities that we have in our heart. Please, Lord Nrisimhadev, protect us from, you can say, you know, the enemy within, or our own impurities, our own desires that will take us away from the path of pure devotional service. Not fulfill those desires, protect us from those desires. Please remove those desires. Not just, you know, deprive us of the opportunity to encounter the objects of those desires, but remove the desire. Being away from the objects of those desires, that's nice too, but if the desire still remains, it's only a matter of time until the object will appear by the arrangements of Maya and attract us once again. Changing the scenery doesn't provide protection. Cleansing the heart within provides protection. In the Karma Kanda rituals, Ganesh is offered prayers. And every, I mean, not some of them, but every Karma Kanda Yajna, after announcing or reciting the name of the Bhokta of the Yajna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Bhokta of the Yajna, various other names are cited. The demigod who's being approached for a particular intention, sankalpa, the intention is stated and Ganesh's name is invoked to remove the obstacles in fulfilling that material desire. We find in Sri Brahma Samhita a nice description of Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami, where Ganesh is being respected for his removal of obstacles. But when one worships Ganesh in the way that Sri Brahma Samhita is describing, in the same way that Rupa Goswami describes in the 64 items of devotional service, it's for removal of the obstacles on the path of pure devotional service. In that verse, it specifically says that the capacity that Ganesh has to remove obstacles comes from Govinda. He can't do anything. Or any of the other devatas that are also respected in prayers in Sri Brahma Samhita. Just like we read this morning, according to what Brahma was speaking to Krishna, the living entities can't act. They can't even exist without the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, same is true for the demigods, same is true for Ganesh. As important as he is in the process of sacrifice, he can't do anything. And generally speaking, persons who are performers of the karma kanda rituals, they do so because they want fulfillment of material desire. And what Ganesh doesn't do is, he doesn't protect them from the fulfillment of their material desire. He facilitates the fulfillment of their material desire. It's for that reason that Srila Prabhupada didn't introduce that amongst the 64 items in bhakti. Once Prabhupada was asked, Srila Prabhupada, this is in Nectar Devotion. It says worship of Ganesh. How come you never introduced it? How come you never taught us worship of Ganesh? And Prabhupada said, because if you worship Ganesh, you have so many material desires, Ganesh will fulfill your material desires and you'll be entangled more in material life. And therefore, we worship Lord Nrisimhadev. Because he removes those desires from the heart. And that's real protection. It's real munificence. Ganesh, it is said, worships Lord Nrisimhadev. Persons worship Ganesh, Ganesh worships Lord Nrisimhadev. Ask Ganesh who you should worship. He'll tell you worship Lord Nrisimhadev. For real protection, protection from the cycle of birth and death, protection from the entanglement in seeking, even in a religious way, but seeking fulfillment of material desire. Rather, protection comes in the form of protecting us from those material desires. And what are some of the ways that we can pray to Lord Nrisimhadev? We can pray to him for protection of our vows, to help us, give us the strength and the purity, and just like that nice prayer that Sridhar Swami composed, two things: the awakening of loving ecstasy killing the nescience that attacks the devotees, but at the same time enlightening the devotees from within, awakening their dormant loving attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, our real shelter, protecting our vows, or protecting our devotional service, protecting others in their devotional service who are very dear to us. We can pray, I'm going to recite later a prayer that Prahlad recited in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam for protection of the whole creation from the consequences of misuse of free will. So much turmoil in the world. And you know, it's just when you think it's reached its peak, it gets worse. Like Srila Prabhupada said, what's the use of reading the newspaper? Because we know already what's in the newspaper. You know, somebody blew up somebody, and one country has hostility towards another country, and one politician is duking it out with another politician. Some horrible, you know, child molestation thing, or woman murder, rape thing, and you know, and then the next day, and then the next day, and the next day. It just goes on and on and on. Hot war and cold war. People blowing each other up. And so protection doesn't mean just like, you know, bring the temperature down a little bit so people can be a little cool. It means remove those material desires, because otherwise change the scenery, the impurity is still inside, it's going to come out. And protection of our faith, or the opposite, protection against attacks on faith. Because to advance in spiritual life, there must be faith. We discussed this in Puri. Krishna says it explicitly. Without faith, you're defeated before you even start. Your hopes for liberation, your hopes for fruitive activity, your hopes for anything, it's vinashati, it's finished before you even get up and do anything. For the faithless, there's no hope in this world or the next. It's a world of darkness. The converse is where there is faith, one can assuredly, confidently move along the path that will take one to the light, take one to Krishna, the spiritual world. And there are individuals, malicious as they are, their whole business is smashing and harming and harassing and challenging, destroying, if possible, faith. When one can say, just as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says in Madhurya Kandamani, the whole progress of bhakti is but stages of faith. Under different names, from Shraddha to Prema, the subtext is faith and stages of faith, up to the stage of Prema. One's progress in spiritual life is the progression of one's faith. We should be very careful to seek Lord Nrsingadev's protection from those elements, we say personalities or mediums of communication or association of persons who are not only faithless, but they're specifically on the attack to destroy faith. If someone can, like, the kings, even at this temple, there were kings that defaced the outside of the temple. They tried to, destroy the deities and so on and so on. That can't destroy one's faith. But that which harms one's faith is worse. As bad, as horrible as the other is, it's worse. Prahlad Maharaj was in the company of such a person who he saw the faith that Prahlad Maharaj had in Vishnu was something that had to be destroyed. He gave the assignment to his teachers, destroy his faith. They couldn't destroy his faith. Or like we heard about Haridas Thakur. And the Qazi was pleading with Haridas Thakur, just chant the name of the Lord that you find in your own scripture. Just give up this chanting of Krishna's name, take another name, and everything will be all right. Haridas Thakur said in reply, if I've done wrong by chanting Krishna's name, then consider if there's something wrong if someone's changing from Muslim to Hindu, then why is it not wrong for the Hindu becoming a Muslim? If there's some punishment that's fit for a Hindu that becomes a Muslim, then punish me like that. You're the king. Be just and fair. And if there's some principle that's in violation, then punish me accordingly. But I'll tell you one thing. If you decide the punishment is that you will kill me, Supposing you say the punishment is you chop my body into little pieces, I still won't be able to stop chanting. Because chanting comes from the heart. It's a principle that's from the heart. I won't stop chanting. Do with me what you wish. Do with this body what you wish. But that which is intrinsic to the soul, you can't take that away. But in the less than mature stages like Haridas Thakur, the mature stage, faith may be soft and pliable. Or it may be firm, but not like Haridas Thakur's faith. And our activities, just like our yatra mentioned this morning, it's to nourish faith. And we keep the association of devotees because it nourishes faith, and we don't keep close association with non-devotees because it's detrimental to faith. But then there are these other personalities that are sometimes in the dress of devotees that just, their business is to harm faith. That's their 24/7, their mission. One should be very careful about such persons and take shelter for protection of Lord Nrisimhadev when such personalities are there. Lord Nrisimhadev gives his protection. It's described that when Hiranyakashipu understood that Sanda and Amarka, the two sons of Shukracharya, were unsuccessful in removing the faith of Prahlad, he decided there's only one thing left: kill him. His own son, 5 years old, kill him. And one of the means that they tried to kill him was they took him on top of a cliff and pushed him off the cliff, so he would come crashing down and die. Only the place where he fell was just like Vishakhapatnam is very close to the ocean, and at least the description is that at that time the ocean was much closer, and as he fell down off the cliff where the persons who had pushed him, where he was headed, Lord Varaha appeared in his transcendental form and caught Prahlad. He wasn't destroyed. Lord Varaha specifically because Lord Varaha is the form of the Lord that rescued Mother Earth, who had fallen into the Garbhodak ocean. And with his tusks he lifted the earth back to a position of safety. So he was protecting Prahlad. And that very form that protected Prahlad, later Prahlad came to this place and he was meditating on having a form of the Lord like that form that rescued him so that he could worship. Before Prahlad came to this place, long before, Lord Brahma, who had also seen that form of Lord Nrisimhadev, he went to the shore of the Milk Ocean, was praying to the personality of Godhead, similarly as Prahlad was, for a form to worship. And so this form of Jiyad Nrisimha was manifest for them to worship. This was very early in Satya Yuga. After a long period of time passed, the deity, the Nrisimha, partly Varaha, partly Nrisimha deity, is described. The deity has a head of Varaha, the body of a human, and the claws and the tail of a lion. Over a period of time, time has a way of destroying things, the worship became neglected. And up here on the top of Simhachalam, an anthill formed, covering the deity. But the deity was happy because the cold nights of the winter and the scorching heat of the summer and the rain of the rainy season, he was protected from all of that through the whole of Satya Yuga. Then in Treta Yuga, King Pururava, who is described in the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, came here. Pururava was a descendant of Atri Muni. Atri Muni is one of the Sapta Rishis, direct sons of Lord Brahma. And from Atri Muni came Soma. From Soma came Buddha, not Lord Buddha, but a different Buddha, spelled differently. And then Pururava. So Pururava came from a great lineage of personalities. But as it sometimes happens, even great persons get distracted. He got distracted by Urvashi. So he was traveling about the universe with Urvashi in his Vimana and came to this very attractive place, and Jiyad Nrisimha became disgusted. There are different versions of the part that I'm about to narrate, but he became so disgusted that he assumed the form of a wild boar, and he began disrupting the activities of Pururava. Just leave it at that. And Pururava was very disturbed, and Urvashi was very disturbed. And that night, Pururava had a dream. In the dream, this deity, form of the Lord, appeared in his dream and instructed Pururava, I'm here on top of this mountain in my deity form. Just as you saw that boar during the day, my deity form is here, and I'd like you to worship me. Please find me. So when he woke up the next morning, he looked everywhere and couldn't find the deity. So he had a second dream, and the deity informed him exactly where he was, inside an anthill. So he found the deity and began worshiping the deity according to the standards of elevated conditions of deity worship. Some time passed, Pururava remained here, and he appeared the third time in the dream and said, the ants were serving me better than you're serving me. It's so hot. My anger from what Hiranyakashipu did is still very intense, and my body heat is very intense. The ants were covering me very nicely with sand so that my body temperature was cooled. So he then gave an instruction, which is followed to this day, which is cover my body with 120 kgs of sandalwood. And then after 1 month, another 120 kgs. And then after another month, another 120 kgs. And after another month, another 120 kgs. And leave my body like that until 1 year from the time that you began. So around the time in our Vaishnava calendar of Chandan Yatra, those of you that have visited temples, Vrindavan is fabulous in its honoring of Chandan Yatra, covering the deities completely in Chandan. So this deity not just covered in Chandan, but 120 kgs. You know, the deity is like this. So on Jayeshta Trayodashi, I believe that's the date, on that day they begin covering the deity, and by dawn the next morning, 120 kgs. And then the following Purnima, another 120, another 120, each Purnima following. And then one day, out of the whole year, Akshaya Tritiya is the day. The deity, the chandan is removed, and this place here is a madhouse. So many pilgrims come, of course, all at once. Millions of people all at once filing through those little places to have quick darshan of the deity. Some of our devotees have been here for that festival. One day out of the whole year, you can see the deity in his uncovered form. And then again the next day, 120 kgs. Next month, 120 kgs. So what we saw, that's 480, and we were going to ask, it's like, I don't know what you have to do. I can guess what you have to do to get some of the chandan that came off the deity. We're going to see if we can get some. And if we can't get some, one of the devotees says he has some in his home and he'll give us some chandan from the deity. A very nice festival. And you all saw the deity covered by chandan. And over to the side is Govindaraj Swami, the Utsav Murti, that on various festivals they take that Murti and conduct their festivals with him. After some time, during the time of Madhvacharya, when he came to visit here, a Bhudevi Murti was installed. Did you go up on that raised platform as you came out of Didi Darshan and saw there's the first altar up on that raised platform is a deity of Mahalakshmi. But sometime after Lord Nrsimhadev deity the worship began, Mahalakshmi appeared, or she was installed. And then Madhvacharya, in front of her is Bhudevi. And there's that large stamba. Did you pass by that large stamba? There's a big sign that says there's a local custom if husbands and wives are unable to bear children, they just wrap their arms around the stamba and say a prayer, and presto, they can have children. That's what the sign says. So the pujari asked me to wrap my arms around the stamba, and that's not what I asked for. I said, does it work if you ask for pure bhakti? And he said, oh yes. I think there's other ways to achieve pure bhakti besides wrapping your arms around a stamba. We'll take whatever help we can get. And the murtis of the alvars are there. Very ancient. Isn't that just a feeling of like, who knows how old? And very nice standard of worship. How the deity got the name Jiyad Nrisimha is very curiously described by Murari Gupta. You know who is Murari Gupta? Murari Gupta is an associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Navadvip, by the place where Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur had his headquarters, the Chaitanya Mat. There's his samadhi there, and in the back is Korkishore Das Babaji's samadhi. From that place, if you go away from the Ganga and across this Baldigi, big field, and up is Murari Gupta's house. During the time that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Navadvip, he was one, or if not the, primary note keeper on the activities of Lord Chaitanya's life. He was a Brahmana, and he liked to glorify Lord Chaitanya, and he kept very careful notes. And those kadachas, they're called, were the essential parts of Krishnadas Kaviraj's source material for describing the Adi Leela of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his life in Navadvip. So Murari Gupta also wrote a book, Chaitanya Charita, and in that book, Chaitanya Charita, there's a description of how the deity Jiyad Nrisimha got the name. And the description is as follows. Some point in time after the deity was installed, there was a local villager who was a Vaishnava, who was very physically strong, and his occupation was he was a farmer. His name was Pundraya. So Pundraya, because things were a little more wild here, in a different way wild than they are today, he stayed up at night to watch his crops to make sure that they were protected from wild animals and thieves and whatever might come. So one evening, when Pundraya was protecting his field, a wild boar came into the field where his crops were. And with his tusks, he was making mayhem. He was digging up the earth, and he was trampling the crops and eating some of the crops. And Pundraya came out running after him with a stick. Get out, get out, get out. And the boar quickly ran, and he picked up bow and arrow and shot an arrow and shot the boar. And when he hit the boar with his arrow, the boar cried out, "Rama, Rama!" And Pundraya realized, this isn't just a boar. What boar says Rama, Rama when you hit him with an arrow? So, who are you? What a big offense I've made. Please tell me who you are. And he followed the boar, and the boar entered a cave. So he's at the entrance to the cave because it was too small for him to enter, pleading with the boar, please tell me who you are. What have I done? What personality are you? I've made a big offense. A voice came from inside the cave. I'm the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But I wasn't hurt by your arrow, so you need not worry. You can go home now. It's okay. Everything's all right. Pundraya couldn't go home. I've shot an arrow in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What an offensive personality I am. And he sat by the cave for 2 days and 2 nights fasting, praying, pleading with the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his heart to please excuse him, somehow give him the means to relieve him of this offense. At the end of the 2nd day and the 3rd morning, he began crying out loud into the cave again, "Oh, Supreme Lord, please forgive me. Such a horrible offense I've made. What can I do to compensate for this offense?" And he heard the voice again saying, "Don't worry, I've not been hurt. Everything is all right. You can go home. You please me very much by your austerity. That's sufficient. Everything is okay." And Pundraya said, if everything is okay, if you've actually forgiven me, then may I make this request? May I see your form again? And I'd like to bring the king. I'm sure the king would like to see your form also. The voice came from in the cave, yes, bring the king. That's a very good suggestion, proposal. And so Pundraya went to the palace of the king. He's a farmer, rough-looking fellow, been fasting for 2-3 days. Who knows what his appearance was. But the king was very pious, and just because it was a citizen, something like we find Ramchandra, he made arrangements where ordinary citizens could come and he would give audience to them and hear what their concerns were. So the farmer was invited into the palace. And the king heard Pundraya, his whole narration, and said the Supreme Personality of Godhead is going to provide his darshan. Please come, I'll show you. The king was very happy. This is, in a lifetime, how can one expect such a wonderful opportunity? Let us go at once. And Pundraya said, but you must come alone. That was the condition of the Lord. So they came to the mouth of the cave, and the king was very humbly appealing to the Lord. Please show us your form. So the Lord said, sprinkle milk into the mouth of the cave, and just keep sprinkling milk into the mouth of the cave, and I will show you my form. And as he was sprinkling and sprinkling, the form of the Lord rose from the cave floor, and he saw the form of the deity, Jiyad Nrisimha. And he built a very beautiful temple for the worship of the deity. Sometime later, a very, very wealthy merchant came and was offering his prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he stayed for days, engaging in austerities and praying to the Lord very seriously, seeking the Lord's mercy. Finally, the Lord spoke to him and said, you have pleased me very much by your devotion and your austerities. Please tell me, what benediction would you like? And he said, I only have one request. When I was born, my mother gave me the name Jiyad. So can you call yourself after me? The Lord said, so be it. So from that time, Jiyad Nrisimha. I don't know if that's what any one of us might have requested, but that's what the merchant Jiyad requested. Jiyad Nrisimha, until to this day, his name is connected with the Supreme Lord. That's how the deity is known, Jiyad Nrisimha. In both of these narrations, there's one thread that holds the two incidents together. The farmer and the merchant. And that's that the Supreme Personality of Godhead reciprocates with the devotion and the love of his devotees. We'll hear this consistently throughout the South Indian Yatra, but the Lord is Bhaktavatsala, as with Prahlad. He's very kind upon his dear devotee. The Lord is very pleased by the devotion and the humble service of his devotee, and the Lord reciprocates according to the desire of his devotee. So if we're back to the mention of protection, if we're seeking protection, specifically protection from our own impurities and shortcomings and material desires, surely the Lord will reciprocate. Why? So that we can enter into the realm, into the house of pure devotion. So we may do things to try to protect ourselves. We may do things to try to rid ourselves of our impurities, but anyone who's tried to do that knows what it's like. So we can't do that on our own. We need to make such efforts, but we can't do it on our own. We need the protection. We need the supreme protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord likes being known by the names of his relationship with his devotees. We find this in Harinam Chintamani. By Haridas Thakur, there's primary names and secondary names of the Supreme Lord. And the secondary names, they indicate the Lord's position. Parameshwara, Paramatma, So different names that indicate his position as the Supreme Controller. And those names that are primary names are names that indicate the Lord and his devotee. Mentioned in Harinam Chintamani as Yasoda Nandana and Nanda Nandana. Krishna in his relationship with his mother and father. Or Radha Raman. Or we're going to visit tomorrow the place where Kurma performed his pastimes with his devotees. And when Lord Chaitanya delivered the leper Vasudeva, so Vasudeva Amrita Prada, mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita, we'll hear tomorrow, but that Lord Chaitanya became known by that name. He's Gaurahari. He's Vasudeva Amrita Prada. He is the deliverer of his dear devotee Vasudeva. So in this way, the Lord likes being known by his loving relationship with his devotees. He likes those loving relationships. He likes us to address him in that way. And by addressing him in that way, we're benefited, particularly in awakening love. By appreciating the love of the Supreme Lord that he has for his devotees, our love becomes also awakened. Gopi Jana Bhalava, Giridhari, the different names of Krishna interacting with his own devotees. Mentioned in the prayers that Sridhar Swami offered, there's these two features. The feature that Nrsimhadev shows to the non-devotee, the feature that Nrsimhadev shows to the devotee. And the feature that Nrsimhadev shows to the devotee, he's very, very pleased with his devotee. Very soothing, very calming. I had this, just share this little story about my godbrother Sridhar Swami. At some point in time, he was diagnosed as having hepatitis C, which meant that his liver was shot, and the doctor indicated the condition is so far advanced, I estimate that you may have X number of months to live. I think it was 6 months. So, what do you do if you get a notice that you have 6 months? Parikshit Maharaj, 7 days, but supposing it's 6 months, what do you do? Well, one of the things that he did, besides addressing the health condition, is he began worshipping Lord Nrsimhadev. Because specifically, he wanted that his heart, whatever impurity was there, that it would be removed. So his path back to Godhead would not be interrupted. He could go to Krishna by worshipping Lord Nrsimhadev. By different arrangements, his health extended beyond 6 months. So he was then thinking, I should do some service for Srila Prabhupada till my final breath. So he became involved in the Mayapur project, and specifically in the Temple of Vedic Planetarium. Not that he was a scientist, but he had some inspiration of how to perhaps make the Mayapur master plan where it's such that when people, the gazillions of people that are going to come to Mayapur when that's built, that they could be introduced to Krishna consciousness in a very dynamic way. So he was thinking creatively. So he decided with his brahmachari disciple Mayapur Das that he would go to Epcot Center and see how Disney has done different ways of using technology to convey a message and bring people, to some understanding and appreciation of something. So he went, and he parked his car in the parking lot, went in, came back out, and when he went to his car, he noticed that the trunk had been broken into, and when he opened up the trunk, his deity of Nrisimhadev was gone. And then he came back to New York, and he informed me that his Nrisimhadev deity was gone. And I said, Maharaj, who knows what's going to happen to that person? Just like, the Aurangzeb, when he smashed so many temples and so many deities and was on a major campaign to destroy, etc., etc. At the end of his life, some little poem or little expression that he wrote, I have no idea what my destination is. So many atrocious, sinful activities I performed. Who knows what brought about that change of heart? So I said, poor person. And Maharaj, with a big smile, he said, you don't know Lord Nrisimhadev. He said, somehow or another, some very special mercy is going to come to that person's life. I thought, yeah, but they're not a devotee. They're a thief. They stole, not with the intention of devotion, with the intention of something else. He just said, still, who knows? Lord Nrisimhadev is so merciful. He spoke with such, feeling. It was... He had some realization just from his worship of Lord Nrisimhadev. And actually, because he knew he was going to die, he was doing it in earnest. Like Ajamila, when he was hearing this discussion between the Vishnudutas and the Yamadutas, he was very interested in what they had to say. His destination was going to be determined by whatever the outcome of that dialogue was. He wasn't falling asleep. He was wide awake. And Sridhar Swami was similarly wide awake in his worship of Lord Nrisimhadev, and that was his realization, the realization of the devotee, that the Lord is very kind, very, very merciful. And once again, the mercy is to take away from our hearts desire for temporary, worldly, ephemeral things. And what's left? What's left is that which is who we really are, our real happiness. And that real happiness, when it awakens, there's protection. Purity is protection. You don't get purity without shelter of the Supreme Pure. When that purity is there, you're protected. It's happy, it's safe, it's very nice. In 1930, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur came here. So when I don't know how you came up, but we came up walking up that long rampway, and just to the right is the Padapita, the lotus imprint of Lord Chaitanya's feet. There's a nice pujari there who's happy to help you give some of your rupees to that place. One of the devotees that lives here said, previously the Padapita was just before the entrance where the pilgrims go up for darshan, the free entrance for darshan. And they were breaking it down for some construction and didn't know exactly where to put it, and finally they decided in that place over there. So that's not the original place, but good enough. The feet of Lord Chaitanya are there, established by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in 1930. And in 1972, Srila Prabhupada took a small group of devotees, similarly following the path of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and came to Simhachalam came all the way up to the top of the hill in darshan of the deity. And one of the devotees was asking Srila Prabhupada why because the detail had not been available, just as I described. They asked, why all that big mountain of sandalwood on Lord Nrisimhadev? And Prabhupada's reply was, the Lord likes to keep a cool head. That's what he said. So in the very courtyard and the area before the deity, Lord Nrisimhadev personally walked and performed kirtan and offered prayers to Lord Nrisimhadev. So let us also, before we leave, we can offer our prayers to Lord Nrisimhadev for protection. Protect the devotees, protect our hearts, protect our faith, protect our devotional service that we can carry on free from distraction of our own impurity and stay fixed on the path of pure devotional service. By following the path of pure devotional service, we'll get to the goal. We'll get to the shelter of the Personality Godhead's eternal service. I'm going to end with reading two prayers. They come from the 5th canto. I'm going to recite these a couple of times because I like them very much. Prahlad Maharaja's prayers in chapter 18 of the 5th canto. It's prayers by the residents of Jambudvip. The first one is, it's not in meter, it's prose. There's some repeats. Repeat is in Sanskrit is for emphasis. Om Namo Bhagavate Narasimhaya Namastejas Tejase Avir Abhir Bhava Vajranakam Vajradunksang Karmashayan. With your sharp claws and your sharp teeth, please remove from my heart the tendencies for material desire. Randhaya Randhaya Tamo Graso Graso Om Swaha Abhayam Abhayam Atmani Bhuyishta Om Shram. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Lord Nrisimhadev, the source of all power. Tejas, Tejase. O my Lord, who possesses nails and teeth just like thunderbolts, kindly vanquish our demon-like desires for fruitive activity in this material world. Please appear in our hearts and drive away our ignorance, so that by your mercy we may become fearless in the struggle for existence in this material world. And the second prayer, there's only two. Second prayer, Rabindra Sruprabhu said that he's invoked this prayer when asked by a world peace, those kinds of events. When Nitai Gaurasundar's daughter was graduating, was she the valedictorian of her class or something? In college, she asked me, I'm being asked to speak something about, she was selected to speak about her religion before an assembly. So I suggested that she speak on the next verse. She liked the suggestion very much. I didn't get a report what happened after that. I guess I did. She said it was well received. People appreciate it. So this is your note takers might be called upon sometime, somewhere in life. to speak something before a kind of a universal assembly about peace and Krishna consciousness. So it's 5:18:9. Svastyaso vishvasya kalo prasidatam. May there be good fortune throughout the universe. May all envious persons be pacified. May all living entities become calm by practicing bhakti yoga. For by accepting devotional service, they will think of each other's welfare. Manascha bhadram bhajatad adhoksajay. Therefore, let us all engage in the service of the Supreme Transcendence, Lord Sri Krishna, and always remain absorbed in thought of Him. Nice verse. Lord Nrsimhadev ki jai, Prahlad Maharaj ki jai, Jiyad Nrisimha ki jai, Gaur Premanandi.